A warship built to disappear from radar just got caught in broad daylight. Not by a rival warship, not by a spy satellite. By a drone flying overhead. According to CNN, footage obtained by the network shows a Chinese Navy vessel built with a low observable, radar-evading design. The kind of hull shaping and construction meant to make a ship hard to detect and track at sea. Whatever that design was supposed to do against radar, it didn't stop a drone from getting a clear look. Over the next few minutes, we'll walk through what CNN's drone footage actually shows, what stealth on a warship means in engineering terms, and why a hull built to beat radar can still be easy to see through an ordinary camera. We'll also do something the chatter around this story hasn't bothered doing. Keep a hard line between what CNN's footage confirms and what outside analysts are guessing about the ship's class, its role, and its capabilities. Those are two different categories of information, and this video treats them that way throughout. Here's what's actually been reported. CNN says it obtained drone footage of a Chinese Navy warship built with a low observable design. A hull and superstructure shaped and likely coated to reduce how visible the ship is to radar. The footage was clear enough to make out the vessel's distinctive shape and stealth-oriented features, despite a design presumably meant to make that kind of observation harder. CNN frames the footage as evidence that a single, relatively cheap drone did something years of expensive radar-evading engineering were meant to prevent: track the ship visually and document it in detail while it was out at sea. What CNN's footage doesn't do, at least based on what's been publicly reported, is identify the ship's exact class, its designation, its home fleet, its mission that day, or its full weapons and sensor suite. Anything beyond the footage itself, the shape, the visible stealth features, the basic fact that a drone filmed it clearly, is analysis or speculation, not confirmed fact, unless named sources, independent imagery, or the Chinese government say otherwise. We spent some time looking into how naval architects actually design a stealth warship, because the word gets thrown around loosely in headlines. And the more you look at the engineering, the more obvious it gets why a drone overhead can beat a design built to beat radar. Radar works by sending out radio waves and measuring what bounces back. A large flat surface, a perpendicular wall, an exposed antenna or gun mount all reflect radar energy efficiently, straight back toward the receiver, which is exactly what makes a normal ship easy to paint on a radar screen. Naval engineers cut that reflection a few ways, angling the hull and superstructure so incoming waves deflect away instead of bouncing straight back, enclosing weapons and sensors inside smooth housings instead of leaving them exposed, applying radar-absorbent coatings that turn some of that energy into heat instead of reflecting it, and cutting down the small reflective clutter, railings, hatches, antennas that a normal warship is covered in. None of this is new, and it isn't unique to China. The idea traces back publicly to the French Navy's Lafayette-class frigates in the late 1980s, one of the first operational surface combatants built around radar signature reduction. It became far more visible with the U.S. Navy's Zumwalt-class destroyer, whose angular, wave-piercing tumble-home hull was engineered to give a roughly 16,000-ton warship a radar return closer to that of a small fishing boat. None of these ships are invisible. They're measurably harder for radar to detect, classify, and lock onto at range than a conventionally shaped warship. That's the actual, achievable engineering goal, not literal invisibility. That's one of the oldest, most acknowledged limits in naval stealth engineering. Reducing a radar cross-section is real and measurable. Navies test for it under controlled conditions. Making a several thousand-ton vessel invisible across every part of the electromagnetic spectrum isn't achievable, and no Navy has ever claimed otherwise in public documentation. Radar signature reduction lowers the range at which fire control radar can reliably detect and lock onto a ship. It does almost nothing against a human eye, an ordinary camera lens, a thermal imager, or a satellite photo. A hull can be a radar engineer's success story and a photographer's easy target on the same afternoon. That gap between radar stealth and visual exposure is what this footage appears to expose. But there's a second, less obvious problem with stealth warship design that this story puts back in the spotlight, and it has nothing to do with radar physics. It's about who's flying cameras near naval shipyards and open water now, and how cheap that's gotten. Small drones, hobbyist and commercial grade, have become one of the most persistent, least discussed threats to military secrecy anywhere in the world, and this isn't a claim specific to China's Navy. The Navy, the Royal Navy, and multiple NATO defense ministries have all publicly acknowledged, in various contexts over the past several years, that cheap commercial drones flying near shipyards, bases, and fitting out piers make it much harder to keep a new hull design under wraps until a Navy is ready to unveil it. A warship under construction or on sea trials is at its most exposed exactly when a Navy would most want to control what the outside world sees of it. A drone that costs a few $100s and can be bought at any electronics retailer can loiter overhead, filming in high resolution for a fraction of the cost and risk of any traditional intelligence gathering method. That connects to the open source intelligence community. Independent analysts working from commercial satellite imagery, drone footage, and shipyard photos shared online who have tracked construction of new Chinese warships, including its aircraft carriers, well before Beijing formally announced them, according to the U.S. Department of Defense's annual report to Congress on China's military and security developments involving the People's Republic of China. The People's Liberation Army Navy has grown into the largest navy in the world by hull count, backed by shipbuilding capacity the Pentagon's own report describes as dramatically larger than that of the United States. That's a Pentagon assessment, attributed to the Pentagon, not this video's claim. And it's the kind of well-documented modernization effort that makes any new hull, stealth-oriented or not, a subject of intense outside interest the moment a camera catches it. What's notable here isn't that a drone caught a warship on camera. Drones catch warships on camera fairly often now. What stands out more is that a vessel with visibly low observable features was apparently out where a drone could reach it at all. Because if China's Navy is fielding hulls built around that design philosophy, that's a data point about where its shipbuilding program is heading, independent of whatever this specific ship turns out to be classified as. One detail that stuck with us going through the coverage. CNN's report is careful not to name a class or a hull number, and that restraint is itself informative. When outlets have solid identification, they usually state it plainly, attributed to a named defense official or a specific piece of open-source analysis. The absence of that kind of claim in CNN's own reporting is one more reason to treat the more detailed guesses circulating elsewhere about exact tonnage, weapons fit, or fleet assignment as unverified analyst speculation, not settled fact. Stepping back from the ship itself, what strikes us is what this says about naval competition generally right now, in 2026. Stealth hull design used to be something only a handful of navies, the United States, France, a few others, invested in heavily and discussed publicly. If China is now building surface combatants around the same low observable philosophy, that's less a story about one vessel and more a signal about the direction of a shipbuilding program that multiple U.S. defense assessments have already flagged as expanding faster than any other navies in recent decades. Here's a take that might not sit comfortably with either side of this story. Treating this footage as proof China's stealth design failed overstates what stealth design was ever built to do. A radar-evading hull doesn't fail because a camera drone photographs it in daylight from a few hundred feet up. It's doing the specific job it was engineered for, reducing the range and reliability of radar detection and fire control lock-on, regardless of whether a drone can film its silhouette. Calling this footage proof the stealth design doesn't work makes a catchier headline than an accurate one. So if the radar stealth engineering arguably did its job, why does a piece of drone footage matter at all? Because of what it reveals about exposure risk generally, and that's a more interesting question than the clip on its own. Analysts who study naval imagery for a living, the same open-source community that's tracked Chinese carrier construction for years using satellite photos, typically use footage like this to estimate a vessel's dimensions, compare visible features against known reference points, and try to place it within a family of existing or previously reported designs. That process is slow. A single video, often shot at an angle, from a distance, without a fixed scale reference in frame, rarely produces confident conclusions on its own. Independent analysts generally wait for multiple images or videos from different angles, distances, and dates and cross-reference them against satellite imagery over time before publishing anything resembling a firm identification. CNN's report, as far as it's been described, provides the footage itself. It doesn't appear to include independently verified measurements, and neither does this video, because we don't have them either. That verification gap is worth sitting with, because it's the biggest reason to stay cautious here. Confirming a ship's exact class from video alone is genuinely hard. Pixel-based length estimates depend heavily on camera angle, lens distortion, and distance, and can be off by a meaningful margin, even with careful analysis. Analysts who do this well are usually explicit about their uncertainty, publishing estimated ranges rather than exact figures, and revising as more footage becomes available. Anyone presenting a single drone clip as proof of an exact tonnage or hull designation is skipping steps serious open-source analysts don't skip. Most people assume stealth means invisible, full stop. It doesn't. It means harder to detect by a specific type of sensor within a specific range, under specific conditions, not undetectable by anything, at any range, under any conditions. A ship can be genuinely hard for a warship's fire control radar to lock onto at 15 or 20 miles and still be perfectly visible to a cheap drone hovering 300 feet overhead in clear daylight. Those two facts don't contradict each other. They describe two different sensors solving two different problems. That distinction is really what separates the confirmed part of this story from the part that's still, honestly, a guess. So here's a genuine question, not a rhetorical one. If a ship's radar stealth does exactly the job it was designed to do, but a cheap drone can still document it in detail from the air, is that stealth design still a meaningful military advantage, or mostly useful in peacetime before anyone's actively trying to hide a ship from cameras rather than radar? The honest answer probably depends on the scenario, not on this one piece of footage. The footage isn't really the end of this story either. It's closer to the opening move, because once a hull design has been filmed clearly enough to work from, the open source analyst community CNN's report sits alongside doesn't usually stop looking. Follow-up satellite imagery, additional drone or ground-level photography, and comparative analysis against previously known Chinese naval programs tend to arrive over the following weeks, not all at once. As of now, what's confirmed is limited but specific. CNN obtained and published drone footage showing a Chinese Navy vessel with visibly low observable design features, an angular, radar-shaping hull and superstructure consistent with the same general design principles used on other stealth-oriented warships around the world. What remains unconfirmed is everything layered on top of that footage by outside commentary. The ship's exact class or hull designation, which fleet or shipyard it's associated with, whether it's a single prototype or the start of a production run, its full weapons and sensor fit, and its intended operational role. China's Ministry of National Defense has a long-standing practice of not commenting in detail on individual ship movements or new class disclosures until Beijing chooses to unveil them on its own terms, so an official confirmation isn't likely to arrive quickly if it arrives publicly at all. There's a detail in how open-source analysts estimate a vessel's length and beam from video alone, using known reference objects in frame, that we didn't have room to unpack here. If that's something you'd want broken down properly, say so in the comments. What isn't yet public? The ship's official designation, if Beijing has assigned one, whether the vessel filmed is a one-off prototype or the first of a series, and how its actual radar cross-section compares, in real operational terms, to the People's Liberation Army Navy's existing surface combatants, since that comparison needs data no public source has released. Anyone tracking this story is better served watching specialist naval outlets than headline aggregators. Outlets like USNI News and Naval News have a track record of publishing follow-up analysis, including satellite imagery comparisons and expert commentary, in the days and weeks after footage like this surfaces, not in the first news cycle. So the real headline here probably isn't that China's Navy has an invisible warship that turned out not to be invisible. It's that in 2026, keeping a new warship design fully under wraps has gotten close to impossible for any Navy, not primarily because of spy satellites or rival intelligence services, but because of a piece of consumer technology almost anyone can buy off the shelf. That exposure problem isn't unique to China's Navy. It applies just as much to the United States, to Russia, to every Navy currently investing in low observable hull designs, whether or not their own version of this moment has made headlines yet. The real story isn't one ship caught on camera. It's how much harder naval secrecy has gotten for everyone, all at once. And if you want to see how this same exposure problem has played out around other next-generation warships, that's a story for another video.